The Galactic Council chamber was one of the greatest wonders of the known universe. It was not built by any single species. It had grown slowly, layer by layer, as more civilizations had joined the Great Alliance. The floor was a vast circle made of shining black stone, polished so smooth that it reflected the lights above like water. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows, and from it hung glowing spheres that changed colors to mark which species was speaking. Around the chamber, raised seats stretched in a giant ring where ambassadors, generals, and monarchs of hundreds of races gathered. For most humans, this place was still a mystery. Earth had joined the Council only 2 years ago, and most aliens thought little of them. They were newcomers, fragile and inexperienced compared to civilizations that had sailed the stars for thousands of years. Humanity had been placed at the far edge of the chamber, among the minor species whose voices carried little weight. But today was different. Today, the Zorathian Queen had come. Her arrival was not like the quiet walk of diplomats or the graceful glide of ambassadors. No, her entrance shook the chamber. Massive doors split open with a booming sound, and from the dark corridor beyond came her guards armored in black steel that shone like oil. Behind them, the Queen herself appeared. She was tall, taller than any human, with a frame both regal and terrifying. Her body shimmered in scales of deep crimson, each one lined with silver edges that caught the light. Her eyes glowed faint gold like twin suns locked in her skull, and her crown was not a jewel but part of her very bone structure, rising in jagged spines from her forehead. The air seemed heavier as she walked. Her voice had not yet spoken, but everyone already felt her presence. Even the largest and proudest aliens, the multi-armed Kurthak generals, the floating Graal oracles, fell silent when she passed. The Zorathians were not just another race. They were conquerors, rulers of dozens of worlds feared for their warships and unyielding will. Many species had tried to resist them and had been broken. The fact that the Queen herself had come to the Council was extraordinary. When she reached the center of the chamber, the glowing sphere above her turned crimson, signaling her right to speak. She lifted her head and her voice carried across the hall like thunder rolling over mountains. "I, Queen Zeralis of the Zorathian Empire, make a claim," she declared. Her voice was both sharp and melodic, the kind that could order executions or sing lullabies with equal power. The Council stirred uneasily. Claims were usually about territory, resources, or disputes, but the way she spoke, the cold certainty in her tone, made even the oldest species nervous. Her golden eyes swept across the gathered representatives. For a moment, silence ruled. Then she raised her long clawed hand and pointed. Her finger did not aim at the ambassadors of the great powers. It did not aim at the generals of rival empires or the leaders of ancient worlds. It pointed at a small group sitting quietly in the shadows. The humans. More specifically, at the youngest among them, Ensign Daniel Rains. Daniel froze. He was just 20 years old, the lowest-ranking member of Earth's delegation. His job was mostly to carry documents, run messages, and watch silently as the ambassador spoke. He had never expected to be noticed, let alone chosen by the most powerful queen in the galaxy. Every head turned toward him. The chamber filled with whispers. In languages human ears could not even translate fast enough. Ambassadors leaned to one another, muttering, hissing, and growling. Some laughed in disbelief. Others frowned in suspicion. The queen's voice rose again, echoing through the stone hall. "That human will be mine." The words fell like a hammer. She said it not as a request, not as a negotiation, but as a decree. She spoke the way one might declare a victory already won. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. His throat went dry, but he forced himself to keep breathing. Every instinct told him to look away, to hide behind his ambassador, but something stronger kept him still. Perhaps it was fear, perhaps pride, but he did not shrink under her golden gaze. Earth's ambassador, Helen Carver, stood quickly. She was a tall woman in her 50s, her gray hair tied back, her uniform crisp. Though she was not a soldier, she carried herself with the calm strength of one. She raised her voice so the sphere above would turn blue, granting her the right to speak. "Your Majesty," she said firmly, "humans are not possessions. No member of this council may claim another as property." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Dozens of alien eyes turned on her with disbelief. Some even chuckled. Property, slavery, and tribute were not uncommon in the galaxy. though Earth had outlawed such practices long ago. To many species, her words sounded almost childish. The Queen's golden eyes narrowed. You misunderstand. This is not a request. It is a recognition of value. The boy belongs to me. Daniel felt his chest tighten. The boy, that was all he was to her. He wanted to speak, to protest, but his voice stuck in his throat. His hands trembled in his lap. Ambassador Carver did not flinch. With respect, Majesty, humans do not belong to anyone. Not to you, not to anyone else. We are free people. The tension in the chamber grew heavier. The Zarathian guards at the Queen's side tightened their grips on their weapons. Some alien ambassadors whispered that the humans were signing their own death. Others leaned forward with interest as though watching a game grow dangerous. Daniel's mind raced. Why him? Why not the ambassador or a general or some important leader? He was just a low-ranking ensign. He had no influence, no power, unless that was the point. The Queen studied him carefully, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. Do you deny me, little human? She asked. The question was directed at him. His heart thudded painfully, but Daniel forced himself to stand. His legs felt weak, but he locked his knees and raised his chin. Yes, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. I deny you. The chamber fell utterly silent. No one denied the Zarathian Queen. Not kings, not emperors, not entire nations. And yet here stood a single young human refusing her. For a moment, Queen Xyrelis did not move. Then her lips curved into something that might have been a smile or a warning. Interesting, she said softly. The silence broke. The council erupted into noise. Some shouted for order. Some laughed nervously. Some warned of war. Ambassador Carver placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder, guiding him back down to his seat. But she could feel the tremor in his body, the fear he tried so hard to hide. The Queen, however, did not press further. She lowered her hand and turned slowly toward the rest of the chamber. Then let the council know this, she declared. The Zarathian Empire does not forget. The human spirit will be tested, and when the test is done, the galaxy will see whether humans are free or broken. Her words rang through the chamber like a promise carved in stone. Then she turned, her crimson scales gleaming under the lights, and walked back toward the massive doors. Her guards followed, the echo of their armored boots shaking the chamber walls. Only when the doors closed did the council breathe again. Daniel sat frozen in his seat, his hands still trembling. He had no idea why she had chosen him or what kind of test she meant, but deep down in the pit of his stomach he knew one thing for certain. This was not the end. It was the beginning. The council chamber did not calm for a long time after the Queen left. Ambassadors shouted across the circle, arguing in dozens of languages. Some called for sanctions against the Zarathians. Others demanded that humanity hand over the boy to avoid war. And a few, those who secretly hated the Zarathians, smiled with quiet satisfaction, happy to see the Queen finally challenged. But for Daniel, everything blurred together. His ears rang with the noise, his hands would not stop shaking, and his stomach felt as though it had been tied into a knot. He had not planned to speak. He had not even thought before answering the Queen. The word yes had stuck in his throat, and instead his heart had forced the word no out of him. Now, he wondered if that one small word might doom Earth. Ambassador Carver noticed his pale face. She leaned toward him and spoke quietly, her voice calm but firm. Breathe, Ensign. You did well. Don't let them see fear. Daniel swallowed hard and nodded. He tried to sit straighter, but the weight of 100 alien eyes pressing down on him was almost unbearable. Finally, the council leader, a tall, silver-skinned being called Valor, struck the staff of order against the stone floor. The glowing spheres dimmed and the chamber fell into silence again. Delegates, Valor said in a deep voice that carried across the chamber. The Zarathian Queen has made a claim that violates the principles of this council. Yet we all know her strength. If humanity resists, war may follow. If humanity surrenders the boy, peace may continue. The question before us is clear. What path will be taken? The sphere above Earth's section glowed blue again, granting Ambassador Carver the floor. She rose to her feet, her expression steady, her shoulders squared. Let me be plain, she said. Earth will not hand over a citizen, any citizen, as property. We are not slaves. We are not prizes to be collected. If the Queen wishes to make war over this, then so be it. But we will not bow. The words rang boldly, but the reaction was harsh. Dozens of ambassadors erupted in outrage. Some shouted that Earth was reckless, foolish, and arrogant. Others warned that resistance would bring only destruction, not honor. A few, though, clapped their hands or raised their tendrils in support. Those were the races who had once suffered under Zorathian conquest themselves. The Kurthak general, a towering creature with 4 arms and armor made of living bone, stood and let out a booming laugh. "Spoken like warriors," he declared. "Perhaps the humans have spirit after all." But others sneered. The insectoid Threll ambassador hissed, "Spirit will not save them when Zorathian fleets burn their skies." Daniel sat frozen as the argument raged above him. His name was not spoken, but every word felt like a stone thrown against his chest. He was the center of all this chaos, yet he was powerless to do anything. When the council finally adjourned, Earth's delegation returned to their quarters inside the massive station that housed the chamber. The halls were alive with whispers, alien envoys glaring or murmuring as they passed. Inside their private chamber, Daniel slumped into a chair, his face pale. "Ambassador, I don't understand. Why me? Why did she choose me?" Carver looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes softened, though her voice remained firm. "I don't know. But I do know this. Your answer today mattered. If you had agreed, Earth would already be chained. You stood your ground, and that is something no one here expected from us." Daniel swallowed. He wished her words gave him comfort, but instead they only filled him with dread. "But what if she comes for me anyway?" Carver's jaw tightened. "Then we protect you. That is our duty. That is my duty." Meanwhile, in the Zorathian flagship orbiting high above the station, Queen Zeralis sat in her throne of black crystal. Around her, the chamber of war buzzed with activity as her generals argued. "You should have taken the human when you had the chance," one growled. "Now the council knows your intent." "Let them know," Zeralis replied calmly. "Fear spreads faster when it is named aloud." Another general bowed low, his scaled armor clinking. "Majesty, forgive me, but why this human?" "He is weak, untrained, nothing compared to the warriors of other species. Surely he holds no value." The queen's golden eyes narrowed. "You see only flesh and bone. I see what lies deeper. Did you not watch him? He defied me alone, small, trembling, and still he defied. Even our strongest enemies kneel when I speak. But not him." The generals fell silent, unsettled by her words. Zeralis leaned back in her throne, her claws tapping softly against the crystal armrest. "That spirit is dangerous. If one human boy can resist me, what will happen when all of his kind learn to do the same? No, this is not about possession. This is about proof. I will break him, and when he breaks, humanity will break with him." Back in the human quarters, Daniel could not sleep. The others rested uneasily, but he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind full of fire and shadow. He saw the queen's golden eyes every time he closed his own. He thought of his family on Earth, of the oceans and skies he might never see again. He thought of how small he was compared to the galaxy, how weak compared to armies of conquerors, and yet buried beneath the fear, something else stirred. A small, stubborn flame, the same flame that had forced the word no from his lips earlier. He did not understand it, but he felt it. He whispered into the darkness, "You don't own me." The following day, the council reconvened. Rumors spread quickly that the Zorathians were mobilizing their fleets. Some ambassadors begged Earth to reconsider. Others offered quiet support, but little else. When Ambassador Carver spoke again, her voice was unwavering. "We will not surrender a human life to satisfy the pride of an empire. If war comes, we will resist with everything we have." Daniel watched from his seat, trying to look braver than he felt. For the first time, though, he noticed something different in the eyes of a few alien delegates. Where before there had been mockery or pity, now there was something closer to respect. Not all, not many, but enough. That night, in the shadows of the station, cloaked figures moved. Zorathian agents slipped through security, their mission clear: take the boy alive, deliver him to the queen. But Earth had expected such a move. Hidden cameras tracked them, alarms whispered through secure lines, and human security forces intercepted the intruders. Blasters lit the dark halls with bursts of light. The fight was quick but fierce. Daniel was rushed into a safe chamber guarded by armed Marines. His heart raced as the sounds of combat echoed outside. He hated being protected. hated being the reason others risked their lives. When the last intruder fell, the Marines reported to Carver. "They won't stop, ma'am. The Queen wants him. She'll try again." Carver nodded grimly. "Then we prepare. And if she wants a fight, she'll learn what humans do best." From her throne, Queen Zeralis received the news of her failed agents with calm silence. She was not surprised. She almost smiled. "Let them resist," she murmured. "The harder they fight, the sweeter their fall will be." Her golden eyes burned with hunger and certainty. The game had begun, and so the galaxy stood on the edge of conflict. A single young human had become the spark that might ignite a war between Earth and one of the most powerful empires in existence. But Daniel, sitting quietly in the corner of his quarters, did not yet see himself as a spark. He was just a boy, afraid and uncertain. What he did not yet realize was this: the Queen was right about one thing. His spirit mattered, and that small flame inside him would not only decide his own fate, but the fate of entire civilizations. The days that followed were heavy with tension. The Galactic Council tried to keep the peace, but whispers spread faster than light. The Zorathian fleets were on the move. Scouts reported warships gathering near the borders of neutral systems. Every ambassador knew the truth. The Queen would not stop. And all of this, Daniel thought, was because of him. He sat alone in his quarters, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His brown hair was messy, his eyes dark from sleepless nights. He looked nothing like a hero. He looked like a frightened boy who had stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. But there was no escape. The Queen had chosen him, and now he carried the weight of his people's honor. Ambassador Carver entered the room quietly. She carried a data pad in her hand, but her eyes softened when she saw him. "How are you holding up, Ensign?" Daniel gave a weak laugh. "I don't know. One minute I'm running errands, the next minute I'm... whatever this is." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. History has a habit of choosing the most unlikely people. He shook his head. "I'm not strong. I'm not brave. I don't even know why she picked me." Carver placed the datapad down and sat across from him. "I've been asking myself the same question. But the more I think about it, the more I believe it wasn't random. You said no to her. That matters more than you think." Daniel frowned. "Anyone could have said no." "Not anyone," she replied firmly. "Most would have bowed out of fear. You didn't. That's what she saw in you." Her words gave Daniel little comfort, but deep down he felt a spark of truth. He remembered the way the Queen's golden eyes had studied him, not with anger, but with something closer to curiosity. That curiosity soon became clear. The Council, desperate to calm the situation, arranged a private meeting between the humans and the Zorathian Queen. It was not a negotiation, not truly. Everyone knew Zeralis would never compromise. But still, it was a chance, perhaps the last chance to avoid war. The chamber chosen for the meeting was vast and cold, its walls lined with tall columns that cast long shadows. At the far end, the Queen waited on a raised platform. She wore no crown today, for her crown was her own bone rising from her skull like jagged horns. Her crimson scales glistened in the dim light, and her golden eyes burned with the same fierce intensity as before. When Daniel entered with Ambassador Carver and 2 guards, the Queen's gaze locked on him instantly. It was as if no one else in the room existed. "Come closer," she said. Her voice was low, but it carried across the chamber like the pull of gravity. Daniel hesitated, but Carver gave him a small nod. With stiff legs, he walked forward until he stood at the base of the platform. The Queen leaned forward on her throne, studying him. "So small, so fragile, and yet you defied me. Tell me, human, why?" Daniel's throat tightened. He could feel the weight of her eyes pressing against his very soul. But he forced himself to answer. Because I'm not yours." "No one is." For a moment, silence ruled. Then the Queen's lips curved into a slow, sharp smile. "Good. That is the answer I expected." Daniel blinked in confusion. "Expected?" She rose to her full height, towering above him. Her presence was overwhelming, her shadow stretching across the floor like the wings of some great beast. "You think I chose you by accident?" she asked. "No, I chose you because you are what I seek. The Zorathian Empire has conquered countless worlds, crushed countless armies. Every race bends eventually. Every will breaks. But your kind..." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. "You do not break so easily." Ambassador Carver stepped forward sharply. If this is about conquest, Majesty, you will find Earth no different. We will defend ourselves as any free people would. The Queen waved a clawed hand dismissively, her gaze never leaving Daniel. This is not about conquest. This is about truth. My empire is strong, but strength alone is not enough. I have seen cracks in my people, cracks that grow wider with each victory. They fight well, but they do not endure. They win battles, but they do not stand when all is lost. And then I see you, human. Weak body, short life, yet a will that dares to deny me. Her golden eyes burned brighter. That is what I want. That is what I will take. Daniel's heart hammered. You'll never take it. For the first time, the Queen laughed. It was a deep rolling sound that echoed against the stone walls. It was not mocking, it was almost delighted. Do you hear yourself? She said. Already you fight me with words. Already you resist. This is why I want you, boy. Because if I can bend you, then I will bend all of humanity. Ambassador Carver's voice cut sharply through the chamber. You will not have him. The Queen's smile faded. She turned her gaze on Carver, and for a moment the temperature of the room seemed to drop. You think you can protect him? You think your ships, your weapons, your council can keep him from me? Her voice lowered, dripping with dark certainty. Everything breaks, Ambassador. And when he breaks, so will your people. Daniel clenched his fists, anger burning through his fear. He wanted to shout, to tell her she was wrong, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he met her eyes and held her gaze. He would not look away. He would not bow. The Queen studied him a moment longer, then finally turned and sank back into her throne. Go for now, but remember this, human. You cannot hide from me. Sooner or later, I will test your spirit, and the galaxy will see the truth. The meeting ended, but the storm it left behind was only beginning. As Daniel and Carver returned to their quarters, the ambassador placed a hand on his shoulder. She's obsessed with you, she said quietly. That makes you both a target and a symbol. The galaxy is watching to see what happens next. Daniel nodded, though his stomach twisted. He did not want to be a symbol. He wanted to be invisible. But deep down he knew there was no turning back. That night he could not sleep again. He sat by the window of his chamber, staring out at the endless stars. He thought of the Queen's words, of her certainty that he would break. He whispered into the darkness, "You're wrong." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. Could he really stand against her? Could he really endure whatever trial she planned? Somewhere beyond the stars, the Queen smiled in her throne, as if she had heard his words across the void. The day of the trial arrived with no warning. The humans had been preparing for weeks, training, gathering intelligence, and reinforcing their defenses, but nothing could have prepared Daniel for the weight of what was coming. Aboard the Zerathian flagship, the massive ship hovered in silent orbit above a neutral system. Its black hull gleamed under distant starlight, and inside corridors twisted like the bones of some ancient beast. Daniel was escorted through these halls by silent guards whose armor clinked softly with every step. The walls seemed to hum with a strange energy, and every corridor felt endless. Daniel's mind raced. He had trained for space travel, for diplomacy, for survival, but nothing had taught him how to face the Queen herself in a test designed to break him. He tried to recall Ambassador Carver's words. You survived by being human. That is your strength. But the words felt distant, almost fragile against the enormity of what awaited him. Finally, he was brought before the chamber. Unlike the cold stone halls of the council, this place was vast, dark, and alive with light and shadow. A soft pulsing glow emanated from the walls, casting strange patterns on the floor. At the far end, the Queen waited, sitting upon her throne of black crystal, her golden eyes fixed on him. You've come, she said simply. Daniel nodded, unable to find words. The Queen rose, towering above him, her presence pressing like gravity. This trial will not be like your council debates. It will not be decided by words or allies. It is a test of will, endurance, spirit. If you fail, your people will learn the price of defiance. If you succeed, perhaps they will see the truth of your strength. Daniel swallowed hard. What do I have to do? The Queen's claws tapped against the throne. Endure, that is all. Endure what I give you. Resist what I impose. Outlast me, human, and only then will you prove your kind. With that, she waved her hand, and the chamber changed. The walls shimmered, folding into themselves, and suddenly Daniel found himself in a vast, empty landscape that stretched beyond the horizon. The ground was jagged, black, and uneven. A sky of swirling red clouds hung overhead, throwing strange shadows across the broken terrain. Before him, the Queen's image appeared, not physically, but as a towering figure of light and shadow. "Here begins the trial," she said. "I will test every part of you, body, mind, will, endure, and you may leave. Fail, and the galaxy will witness your destruction." The air around Daniel seemed to vibrate, and suddenly he felt it, weight pressing against his limbs, heat burning his skin, voices whispering doubts in his mind. He fell to his knees, gasping. The Queen's power was not just physical. It reached into him, into his thoughts, his fears, his memories. He thought of his parents, back on Earth, of quiet evenings by the ocean, of laughter and sunlight. But the trial forced him to remember fear, loss, and failure too. Shadows rose from the ground, forming creatures of nightmare, some with claws, some with teeth, some with shapes that made his mind scream. Each step forward was met with a new challenge. Each breath burned with effort. Daniel stumbled, but he did not fall. Every time his legs threatened to give way, he forced himself to take another step. Every time his mind screamed to give up, he whispered to himself, "I am human. I do not yield." Days, or what felt like days, passed in this twisted landscape. Time lost meaning. Hunger, thirst, exhaustion, and despair clawed at him. Shadows became walls. Walls became storms. Storms became fire that rained from the sky. Each trial was more severe than the last, yet every time Daniel endured. The Queen watched silently, her golden eyes never leaving him. "Interesting," she murmured. "So small, so fragile, yet she does not break. Perhaps the humans are stronger than I believed." And then she escalated the trial. The landscape shifted into a massive chasm, the edges jagged and slippery. Below, darkness swallowed the ground. Phantom voices rose, echoing all around him, each one a memory of failure, of shame, of fear. Daniel's legs shook as he inched forward, hands gripping the rock. One misstep would send him plummeting into the void. "You will fall," whispered a voice. "You are nothing." Daniel's throat tightened, but he forced himself to speak aloud. "I am human. I do not fall." Step by step he crossed the chasm. The voices screamed, the wind tore at him, but he reached the other side. The Queen's image appeared again. "You endure," she said softly. "You endure longer than I imagined." But the final test had yet to come. The ground shook violently, and from it rose an army of illusions. Enemies Daniel had never seen before. Alien warriors, massive beasts, beings of fire and metal. They advanced unrelenting, their numbers endless. Each strike they made was mirrored in his mind, each wound he felt in every nerve. Daniel fell to his knees again, bloodied and bruised, but still he stood, still he rose. He fought with every ounce of strength, not just his body but his mind, pushing back the illusions with sheer willpower. He shouted with every breath, "I will not yield. I will endure." Hours passed, or maybe days. Daniel did not know. Eventually the illusions wavered, flickered, and vanished. The battlefield became silent. The air was still. And there, at the edge of the horizon, the Queen appeared in her full form. She looked down at him, a strange expression crossing her golden eyes. It was not anger. It was awe. "You survived," she said. Daniel, trembling and exhausted, dropped to his knees. His muscles burned, his lungs heaved, but he lifted his head to meet her gaze. "I told you," he said, voice barely audible. "You were wrong. I do not yield." The Queen's claws tapped against the black crystal of her throne. Perhaps humanity is more than I gave them credit for." For the first time, she seemed uncertain. She looked around the vast empty landscape, at the boy who had refused to break despite everything she had thrown at him. No empire, no army, no machine could force this spirit to bend. "You have survived when none should have." Daniel's chest heaved, but he managed a small smile. He had endured not because he was strong, not because he had weapons, but because he refused to surrender his will. The Queen's image began to fade, the landscape dissolving into starlight. Daniel felt himself lifted gently, carried back to the chamber aboard the flagship. He collapsed onto the floor, exhausted beyond measure. Ambassador Carver and the guards rushed to him, worry etched on their faces. "You did it," she whispered, helping him stand. "You survived." Daniel nodded weakly, barely able to speak. I did what I had to do." The queen watched silently from her throne, her golden eyes still fixed on him. Finally she spoke, her voice low but filled with a strange respect. You endure. You have proven the strength of your spirit. Perhaps humanity deserves more than I believed. Daniel could barely comprehend her words. He was alive. He had survived the impossible. And in surviving, he had shown the galaxy and the queen herself that the human spirit could not be broken by fear, by force, or by even the most powerful of empires. The trial had ended, but its echoes would last forever. The Zarathian queen no longer saw him as just a boy. He was a symbol, a force that could not be ignored. And somewhere in Daniel's heart, a new understanding took root. Strength was not measured in armies or weapons. It was measured in will, in courage, in the refusal to give up no matter the odds. The queen's empire might be vast, her fleets powerful, her warriors unstoppable, but she had learned that the human spirit was something entirely different, something she could not control. The galaxy waited. After Daniel survived the queen's trial, word spread across the stars like a wildfire. Not through formal channels, but through whispers in spaceports, through encrypted messages and the murmurs of countless species who had heard tales of the small human who would not break. Humanity, a newcomer to the Galactic Council, had shown a power that no one had expected, the power of unyielding spirit. Back on Earth, the news reached the highest offices first. President Reyes stared at the holographic reports, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. Daniel's survival was more than a victory for a boy. It was a victory for the planet, for all humans. Every citizen from the largest city to the smallest village felt pride stir in their hearts. Humans, once considered weak, now had proof that they were not to be underestimated. Meanwhile, the Zarathian queen was silent in her throne room aboard the flagship. For days after the trial, she had not spoken to anyone except her closest advisors. Her golden eyes burned, but not with anger. Something different flickered in them: curiosity, respect, even a hint of admiration. You have done the impossible, little human, she murmured to herself, her claws tapping against her throne. You have endured when none should have. Her generals watched nervously, unused to seeing hesitation in her expression. Sorellis turned her gaze toward them. Prepare the fleet, she said finally, but hold your attacks. We will not strike yet. There is more to learn. Back aboard the Galactic Council station, Daniel returned as a hero. His legs were weak, his body bruised and battered, but his mind burned with purpose. Ambassador Carver stood beside him as they addressed the Assembly of Species. The trial has ended, Carver announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Ensign Daniel Rains has survived the test set by the Zarathian Queen. Not through weapons, not through cunning, but through human will alone. Humanity is not to be underestimated. We stand as equals among the stars. Murmurs of astonishment spread through the hall. Some species that had looked down on humans now looked at them with respect. Others, particularly those who had suffered under Zarathian conquest, nodded silently in approval. Daniel, though exhausted, stepped forward. His voice was quiet but firm. I survived because I had to. Not just for myself, but for all of us. If we give in to fear, then we lose before we even fight. But if we endure, if we refuse to break, then nothing, not even an empire, can control us. The chamber fell silent, and in that silence a new truth settled among the delegates. Humans were not weak. Humans had courage, resilience, and a will that could not be bent. The Queen, from her distant flagship, observed everything through a sophisticated visual link. She saw the pride in Daniel's stance, the respect he earned, and something within her shifted. She rose from her throne, her long crimson scales shimmering in the light. You have shown strength beyond your size, human, she said aloud, as if speaking into the empty room. Perhaps I have underestimated this species. Perhaps, she paused, her golden eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Perhaps they are not to be conquered, but to be honored. Her generals exchanged uneasy glances. They were used to fear, obedience, and domination. Respect was foreign to them, especially from their queen toward a human boy. The queen tapped her claws against the armrest. We will retreat for now. But mark my words, the humans are strong, stronger than I imagined. The story of Daniel's trial reached every corner of the galaxy. Tales of his endurance inspired other species who had been subjugated or oppressed. Alliances shifted subtly as aliens realized that perhaps humans could not only survive but also lead. Daniel became a symbol, not a soldier, not a diplomat, but a beacon of hope. Even the smallest species, often ignored in council chambers, began to speak differently. "If humans can survive the Queen's trial, maybe we can stand against oppressors too," they whispered. Back on Earth, Daniel returned home to a hero's welcome. Streets were crowded with cheering citizens. Families waved banners, children ran through the streets shouting his name. He had expected fear, perhaps even resentment, but instead he found pride, admiration, and love. Daniel's parents embraced him tightly. His mother whispered, "You've done what no one thought possible. You've shown them all what it means to be human." His father smiled through tears. "Your courage is our pride, son. You have shown the galaxy the strength of our people." Daniel hugged them both, exhausted but smiling. He felt a warmth he had not known since the trial began, the warmth of belonging, of being part of a species that was stronger together. Weeks later, Ambassador Carver received a message from the Queen herself. The holographic image flickered to life, revealing Xyrella sitting calmly on her throne. "You have endured," the Queen said, her voice steady and almost reverent. "You have proven the strength of your spirit. I will not claim you. I will not claim your people. You are free, and Earth is recognized as an equal among the stars." Daniel watched the image silently, astonished. He had survived. The Queen's acknowledgement was more than he had hoped for. It was respect from the most powerful being in the galaxy. The Queen continued, "Your people have a spirit that cannot be crushed, a will that cannot be bent. Perhaps there is more to learn from them than I realized." And with that, the transmission ended. In the council chamber, humans were no longer the new species to be ignored. They were equals, respected, and cautiously admired. Daniel's endurance had changed everything. Not through weapons, not through politics, but through courage, resilience, and the refusal to give up. The Zorathian Queen retreated to her empire, her eyes thoughtful, her mind turning. She had faced something she had never expected, a human spirit unbroken, unyielding, and radiant. She would remember it, and perhaps in her own way it had changed her view of the galaxy. Daniel, meanwhile, continued his duties as an ensign. But he carried with him the knowledge that he had done more than survive. He had reshaped the galaxy's view of humanity. Wherever humans went next, wherever their ships traveled, wherever their voices were heard, they would carry the message. Humans are strong, not because of weapons or armies, but because of their spirit. And in that truth, the galaxy found a new respect for the species it had once underestimated. The stars shone brighter that night, as if celebrating the courage of a single boy who had refused to break. Across distant systems, whispers told of the human who survived the Queen's trial, the boy who would not yield, and the species whose spirit could not be conquered. Daniel looked up at the sky from Earth, breathing in the fresh night air. He smiled faintly. He was tired, yes, but also proud. He knew that whatever came next, humans would face it not with fear, but with the same determination, courage, and will that had carried him through the impossible trial.